Almost a year ago, one of my favourite video game series of all time got brought back in a big way. Konami was working on a remake of Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater, but not only that, they were finally preserving the original games to modern hardware. The George Foreman grill is going to soon be dethroned as my main Metal Gear machine. This is where the Metal Gear Solid Master Collection comes in, or in this case, we're talking about Volume 1 here. I've always felt that the first 3 Metal Gear Solid games have been essential experiences that I'd recommend everyone give a try, but the Master Collection aims to make these games accessible on newer consoles whilst also offering quality of life improvements in the process. I'm going to be talking about it here in this video. Quick disclaimer, special thanks to Konami for offering me a review code for this game. When the Master Collection was announced, it caught my interest immediately because it was going to bring a significant portion of the Metal Gear games onto newer hardware. For years, the PlayStation 3, it was always seen as the console to get if you wanted to get into the series, but buying the whole console just to play those games, it's not accessible enough for everyone, especially one that's nearing 2 decades since its release. It also just didn't feel right not seeing the classic games on newer consoles, particularly as every major developer has made efforts to preserve their older games for the future. What everyone's here for with this collection is the original Metal Gear Solid, Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty, and Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater. The original Metal Gear Solid is one of the most important games of all time for good reason. It set the bar for narrative storytelling in video games, and leveraged the technology it was built in such an amazing way. You play as Solid Snake, a legendary soldier who was forced out of retirement to infiltrate Shadow Moses Island. The military base has been hijacked by a group of rogue Foxhound operatives who plan to ransom the US to obtain the remains of Big Boss's body, or otherwise they will fire a nuclear weapon in the process. Metal Gear Solid immediately sets in that sense of urgency, with Snake infiltrating the base, and the docks area is just legendary. You have to be careful of where your surroundings are, where you have to move to avoid being caught by the enemy, and how long you can just hold up in a situation like this. The codec, it's extremely helpful in case you're stuck at some point in the game, and it even provides crucial information that ties the story together. The presentation of the story is beyond fantastic, and even though MGS1 has aged considerably owing to the limits of the original PS1 hardware, I still found myself feeling engaged with the characters and the themes as I continue to play along. It bridges the gap between the interactive aspect of video games and the production values in movies really well. The one thing that I can say that has somewhat hurt MGS1 overall is the controls. They're not inherently bad, it's just that trying to move Snake around or trying to use certain weapons feels quite stiff. It is rough and it shows a lot more in some parts of the game, but for the most part, it didn't really impact my experience as much. This is still the same fantastic game that I played all those years ago. The story is fantastic, it's set an example for almost every other game when it comes down to narrative storytelling, and the gameplay, it's still fun to this very day. Metal Gear Solid is still amazing even to this very day. The next game is a personal favourite of mine, and it's really easy to see why. Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty builds on everything right the first game did. Imagine having high expectations after the breakout success of MGS1, and it goes one step further. Metal Gear Solid 2 is set 2 to 4 years after the events of MGS1. Snake is a member of an anti-Metal Gear organization, taking the fight against the bipedal machines that he had fought in the past. He receives a tip-off about a new Metal Gear that is being developed in secret by the Marines, and he infiltrates their tanker to seek the truth of what's going on there. The plant chapter focuses on Raiden trying to infiltrate an offshore facility called the Big Shell to stop a group of terrorists who have taken the president hostage. For Metal Gear Solid 2's visuals, they are still amazing to this very day. Now, keep in mind that this was used to demonstrate what the PlayStation 2 could push at the time, and it was able to deliver that game at 60 FPS. The water, lighting and alpha effects, they still look great, and scaling up to HD displays, it's one of the cleanest games of its generation. The opening segment in the tanker chapter of the game is easily one of the best moments I've ever witnessed in video games, and to see it scale pretty well on modern hardware is great. Now, remember when I said that MGS2 improves on MGS1's gameplay at every level? That's right, the gameplay is just so much better across the board. First person view is expanded, so you can easily aim at enemies if you need to with precision. Snake and Raiden feel smoother to control, so you won't get that one imprecise movement that triggers a game over. The AI is also one of the best parts of the game by far. Soldiers aren't just running at you when you get caught, for instance. They're working together with reinforcements to plan out their next move and to trace your last known location when you're on high alert. They raised the stakes so much with Metal Gear Solid 2, and I consider it to be the pinnacle of not just the 6th generation console era, but a game that's really special to me for good reason, especially with the improvements over MGS1 and the overarching themes of the game. Last, but definitely not least, is Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater. It marks the beginning of the Metal Gear timeline where you're playing not just a snake, but rather a naked snake, as he is drafted into the Soviet jungle to rescue a scientist who has been held hostage by the GRU forces. After he is betrayed by his mentor, the boss, Snake is sent on another mission with the main goal of eliminating her. Metal Gear Solid 3 takes the stealth gameplay to a whole new level in that with the jungle environment, you're always looking at your surroundings. You can choose your sneaking suit and facepaint to suit the time of day, the colours that you can blend in, and it reflects the camera index that your outfit uses to make sure that you're staying out of sight. Unlike MGS 1 and 2, you have to fend for yourself by hunting all sorts of animals and insects to help recover your stamina. It raises the stakes even further during your journey. As a late PS2 era game, Metal Gear Solid 3 just shines. The environments fit the urgent and thrilling tone of the game, and it feels far more interactive than many games of its era and even afterwards. It's clear that the development team were able to get some extra juice out of the PS2's hardware to make one of the best looking games out there, and it still holds up incredibly well on a modern display to this very day. After finishing Metal Gear Solid 3, I'm going to be really honest here. When I finished it the first time round, I thought it wasn't as strong as MGS 1 and 2, but giving it another chance because of the Master Collection, I had a greater appreciation for the story that it was trying to tell. If MGS 1 and 2 succeeded because of the themes that both of those games offered, MGS 3 not only achieves that, but it has an emotional aspect that just hits a lot harder towards the end. I've talked about all three games and how great they are, but how does the Master Collection handle them overall? Unlike previous collections, the Master Collection gives each game its own app and dedicated theme. There are far more options on the table to go with, including the installation of language packs, and some of those do offer additional content to begin with. Metal Gear Solid, for instance, it has the integral re-release in this collection being released in the West for the very first time, with all of the additional content and some difficulty changes compared to the original game. The Master Book and the Screenplay books, they are also neat additions on the table, giving a closer insight to the story of the Metal Gear games, and it shows just how much effort and time was put onto the dialogue of these games. It really feels like a collection that's just spoiling us fans with a lot of these features that was a surprise to see upon booting it up for the very first time. I do think the one thing that people are always looking for in this case is how well do these games run and how well do these games look on modern consoles and PCs. It's a bit of a mixed bag, but it's not all that bad honestly. When the collection originally came out, we got MGS1 in completely emulated form here, and whilst performance was sticking closer to the 30 FPS mark for the most part, there were some parts of the game that did drop below that target. Also, a disclaimer here, if you're in Europe, please install the English US pack, because the UK and European language choices run at 50Hz by default. The difference is huge when it comes down to fluidity and smoothness. Smoothing options have been added to clear up any issues with the presentation, but if you're expecting a full-on remaster here, I don't think that's the case here. But at the same time, MGS1 has been pretty preserved, so I'm happy that it's accessible to more people overall. Now, as for Metal Gear Solid 2 and Metal Gear Solid 3, these versions are based on the HD collection that we got on the PS3 and the Xbox 360. They aim for the same resolution as those games ran on those consoles, but a ton of bugs in the HD collection, mostly visual based, they were fixed. Also, this is where the real difference happens between the Master Collection and the previous editions of MGS2 and 3. The performance is a solid 60 FPS all around. There are a ton of scenes where the PS2 and PS3 they were struggling to maintain their target frame rates, but in this collection, not a single frame rate dropped the entire time that I was playing. And keep in mind that if you're playing on Switch, it's running at 30 FPS, and that is disappointing considering that console is more than capable enough of running those games at 60. They've added a lot more options since the collection released, including the ability to access the pause menu in MGS2 and 3, and analog stick inputs being improved in MGS1. These are all welcome additions to be honest, and I hope they can make it even better with feature patches. It's not even just the main three games included in the Master Collection. Konami is included in the original Metal Gear and Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake, the NES version of Metal Gear, Snake's Revenge, and the graphic novels for MGS1 and MGS2 that were released on the PSP. I think for the overall package that we got in this collection, we were spoiled with the content available. If you're a massive Metal Gear fan or someone who wants to get into the series, the Metal Gear Solid Master Collection is well worth your time and money. It's not perfect, but it's been continually adding a ton of quality of life changes to make the experience a lot better, and I'm not joking here. Metal Gear Solid 1, 2 and 3, they're generally some of the best experiences that video games as a whole can offer here. Now, I've made a few videos back in the past on my channel talking about video games that I've enjoyed, and you can see these videos pop up on the screen if you want to check them out. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.